A massive alien spacecraft suddenly descended, and the giants of the agrarian society looked up in awe, praying for the arrival of their creator. But instead of the creator, what appeared was an AI created by humans from Earth. He piloted the alien spacecraft, hovering over the square, with countless black water canisters suspended in the air. This indicated that he had successfully obtained the ship's security codes. Without any warning, a large number of canisters suddenly poured down like a torrent. The black liquid inside exploded like black water bombs in midair, then vaporized into a mist in the atmosphere. Seeing the dire situation, the giants quickly turned and fled in panic. The black water fell to the ground like a dark storm, spreading like a deadly curse, rapidly consuming the city's inhabitants. The fleeing giants couldn't escape infection, and soon terrifying creatures burst from their chests, evolving into new species. In an instant, the square was littered with the charred remains of the giant race, all turned into blackened corpses. The mastermind behind this attack was the human-designed AI, David, who had become the new creator. To cultivate a more perfect life form, he didn't hesitate to use the black liquid from the genetic containers to hybridize various organisms. After 10 years of experimentation, the black water, which spread through the air, had wiped out all organic life on the planet. This meant that, aside from plants, all living beings had disappeared forever, turning the experimental planet into a dead star. David's new species were never perfect. Until the 11th year, due to the depletion of Earth's ecological resources, humans sent a new colony ship, the Covenant, to spread the seeds of life on the planet Ority 6. The ship carried 2,000 interstellar colonists and 1,140 human embryos. The journey to their destination would take 7 years and 4 months, with 15 couples among the crew in cryosleep. During this time, the ship was operated by Walter, the second-generation synthetic from Wayland Industries. Unlike David, Walter had been stripped of self-awareness and was more suited to human control. One day, as usual, Walter was recharging the Covenant's power grid through the ship's charging sails during its voyage. However, just as the impressive recharging sequence began, an unexpected event was about to occur. While checking the crew's vital signs, the AI mother suddenly issued a warning. A stellar flare was erupting in the nearby region. The high-energy shockwave generated by the neutrino burst not only affected the charging sails but also caused severe turbulence, even threatening the ship's integrity. In the emergency, Walter had no choice but to order the AI to wake the other sleeping crew members. While the ship's control room was already ablaze, Walter, busy extinguishing the fire with an emergency extinguisher, didn't realize that after the crew woke up from cryosleep, the captain's pod malfunctioned and failed to open in time. And despite the crew's efforts, they couldn't open it from the outside, leaving them to watch helplessly as the cryochamber turned into an inferno, causing the captain's wife to break down in grief. After the crisis, aside from the captain, 47 colonists had died unexpectedly, and 16 second-generation embryos were lost. Captain's wife, Daniels, was devastated. What was supposed to be a new life in the future turned into a nightmare as she awoke to find herself a widow. To restore the crew's morale, the deputy captain assumed command and organized everyone to focus on repairing the 17% damage to the ship. Daniels, despite her grief, quickly threw herself into the repair work on the ship. Walter accompanied her to the garage to inspect the terraforming vehicles, and it was there that Daniels confided in Walter. She revealed that colonizing other planets wasn't her idea. It was her husband's dream to build a real wooden cabin by a small lake on the new colony planet. But now that her husband was gone, she didn't even know how to use the building tools. Walter responded warmly, assuring her that he would do everything in his power to help her, which brought tears of gratitude to Daniel's eyes. Meanwhile, the crew was repairing the charging sails outside the ship. Fortunately, the damage wasn't too severe, and the repairs went smoothly, restoring the sails. The sails provided power to the ship, and the Covenant's systems were back online. But on his way back to the ship, crew member Tennessee suddenly picked up a strange signal from space. Upon returning to the ship, the crew immediately activated the ship's AI to analyze the signal. The system converted the signal into audio, revealing a familiar song. This significant discovery indicated the presence of humans nearby, and the signal also contained a set of coordinates, so they immediately began tracking the signal, which originated from a star system not far below their ship. It was an ancient star, and the environment of the star system was similar to that of the solar system, with 5 planets orbiting the star. The 4th planet's environment was the most similar to Earth. The surface gravity of this planet was equal to that of Earth, and it had oceans and land with an established ecosystem, making it even more suitable for human habitation than Origi 6. Moreover, it would only take a few weeks to reach, whereas reaching Origi 6 would take another 7 years and 4 months. After the recent cryochamber fire incident, everyone had developed a psychological aversion to the chambers, and no one wanted to go back into cryosleep. So the captain decided to change the Covenant's course and head to this unknown planet to investigate, hoping they might even find some fellow Earthlings. At this point, Daniels pulled the captain aside and urged him to reconsider. She reminded him that Origi 6 had been identified as the safest colony planet after 10 years of exploration. Why hadn't this planet been detected during those 10 years of scans? And why, after the Covenant arrived, did a solar flare suddenly occur, followed by this strange signal? Now, out of nowhere, a hidden planet appears, perfectly suited for human habitation. The coincidences were too unbelievable, and Daniels warned against risking everyone's lives based on a mysterious signal. However, the captain, stubborn by nature, took Daniels' concerns as a challenge to his leadership. More importantly, he couldn't convince the crew to go back into cryosleep, so he dismissed Daniels' advice, and the two parted on bad terms. The Covenant continued its course toward the nearest planet, and a few weeks later, they approached its orbit. The planet was more beautiful than Earth, with the entire globe cloaked in dense electromagnetic storms. If the mothership were to land directly, it could be dangerous. For safety, they decided to use the lander to enter the planet first. As they entered the atmosphere, they encountered an electromagnetic storm, which terrified the crew, everyone except for the synthetic Walter. Fortunately, they safely navigated through the storm, and they were greeted by a landscape of lush green mountains and abundant water, with a wide variety of plants covering the area. This indicated that the planet had a fully developed ecosystem, with an environment indistinguishable from Earth's. But the terrain was rugged, and the lander could only dock in a shallow water area. Once they had safely landed, all the crew members exited the lander one by one, finding the air breathable, with no need for helmets. The signal source was still 6 kilometers away, so they had to walk to the target location, leaving one person behind to guard the lander. Along the way, the environment was so perfect that even the rational Walter couldn't help but comment to Daniels that building a cabin here would be ideal. Meanwhile, the captain was elated, convinced he had made the best decision, and he began outlining plans for the colony base. But Daniels couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about this planet, though she couldn't quite pinpoint what. They soon discovered a field of cultivated wheat, which seemed normal, but something still felt strange. How could such a perfect ecosystem have only plants, with no signs of animals, no insect sounds, and no bird song? It was as if no organic life existed here at all. When they reached a wetland, the captain's wife, a biologist, stayed behind with another crew member to collect water samples, while the others continued to search for the signal source. Soon, they found a massive alien spacecraft in the forest, the same engineer ship from Prometheus, and the one that destroyed the giant race. Unaware of its significance, the crew immediately began exploring the ship's interior, where they found 2 rows of enormous statues. They had no idea that these giants were the engineers who created humanity. Inside the ship, Daniels discovered a nameplate, and Walter informed her that it belonged to Dr. Shaw from the Prometheus mission 10 years ago. There were also photos of the doctor and her loved one on the ground. The crew then reached the control room and accidentally activated the console, triggering a 3D holographic projection. The hologram showed Shaw sitting in the pilot's seat, humming a song while operating the ship. It became clear that the signal the Covenant had received was sent from here. The crew was left wondering where Shaw and David were and whether they were still alive. One of the men accidentally stepped on a pile of black excrement, causing the black molecules within to disperse into the air. He casually blew a smoke ring at the molecules floating in the air. However, the molecules, when they encountered organic life, seemed to have a mind of their own, instantly clustering together in the air and becoming highly active. Silently, they slipped into the man's ear and penetrated his skin through the pores in his ear canal. At first, the man only felt a slight itch in his ear and didn't pay much attention to it. But after a while, his body began to weaken, and he started sweating profusely. After taking only a few steps, he felt increasingly unwell, and the captain's wife, noticing his condition, realized something was seriously wrong. She found that his breathing had become labored and assumed he had contracted some sort of disease. She quickly contacted the others nearby and began leading the man back to the lander, but another crew member had also been exposed. Touching the black molecules, which then entered his body through his nose. It wasn't long before he too began to show symptoms. They had no choice but to return to the lander immediately to initiate quarantine procedures. But the speed at which the illness progressed shocked everyone. By the time they were close to the lander, the first man could no longer walk. His face turned pale, as if he were poisoned, and he began coughing up blood, terrifying Tennessee's wife. Fearing for her own safety, she ordered them to enter the med bay and avoid touching anything. As the man sat down on the medical table and the woman began treatment, she pulled off his shirt, and what she saw left her utterly petrified. She immediately fled the med bay, locking the door behind her. She knew the man was infected with something sinister and quickly reported the situation to the captain. By now, the man was experiencing severe convulsions, a terrifying sight, and the captain's wife, seeing him in such distress, tried to comfort him with a hug. To her horror, the man's back suddenly sprouted two sharp spikes. Panicking, the captain's wife ran to the crew, desperately pleading for them to open the door. But the next scene only intensified their fear. The man's back violently burst open, and an unknown creature emerged from his body. This was a xenomorph, born vicious and deadly. The captain's wife, in despair, attempted to slit her throat with a knife, but she was no match for the ferocious and agile xenomorph. A crew member, still in shock, grabbed a weapon and rushed in, ready to fight the creature to the death. But in her heightened state of fear and confusion, she accidentally slipped and fell to the ground. Terrified, she scrambled to her feet and managed to escape, successfully shutting the door behind her at the last moment. However, the xenomorph, with its violent temperament, shattered the glass and charged out. The crew member lifted her weapon and fired wildly at the creature, noticing that the xenomorph had already grown significantly in just a few minutes. Moreover, it was extremely fast and agile, effortlessly dodging all the bullets, which only further enraged the woman. She fired a shot at the ship's fuel supply, intending to take the creature down with her, but the xenomorph managed to escape the explosion. By the time the other crew members returned, they could only watch helplessly as the ship exploded and their crewmates perished in the flames. They thought the disaster was over, but little did they know that the real nightmare had just begun. The man behind them could no longer contain the xenomorph within him, and it burst out through his mouth. Before anyone could react, the xenomorph stood up and darted into the bushes. No one present had ever witnessed anything like this before, leaving them paralyzed with a mix of fear and confusion. They all tried to cautiously defend themselves while attempting to contact the Covenant, but due to the storm, they couldn't get through, and a new wave of danger loomed. The synthetic Walter was the first to spot the creature, the same xenomorph that had previously attacked, now lunging toward Daniels. In a critical moment, Walter shielded Daniels from a fatal blow. In just a few hours, the creature had grown even larger, with its attacks becoming faster and deadlier. It had jaws and teeth like a shark, and it bit off Walter's arm on the spot, with its saliva proving to be highly corrosive. The crew finally snapped into action, firing back, but the xenomorph's skin was incredibly tough, able to withstand most of the bullets. At the same time, the creature began to fight back against the humans, and it seemed that the entire team was about to be taken down by the xenomorph. Fortunately, at the moment of life and death, a flare shot into the sky, illuminating the night. The creature, startled by the sudden light, fled in a panic. Out of the darkness, a cloaked figure appeared before them. Though they had no idea who this person was, they had no other choice but to follow quickly. They followed the mysterious figure through a massive gate, and what they saw beyond was horrifying. It was like a graveyard, with countless humanoid figures made of black and resin, lying in every direction. In the center of the enormous square stood a circular structure. The group cautiously avoided the bodies and followed the mysterious figure into the central building. Inside was an ancient and massive palace. It was then that the figure revealed his true identity. It was David, the one who had released the black liquid bombs on the giant race. One of the female team members asked if the place was safe. David lied and assured her it was absolutely safe. He then continued to deceive them, saying that 11 years ago, he and Dr. Shaw arrived on this planet in an alien ship. The ship carried a deadly black liquid virus, which accidentally leaked upon landing, wiping out the entire population here. In the chaos, the ship crashed. Shaw died in the crash, and David wasn't infected because he was a synthetic. Thus, he had been stranded on this planet for 10 long years. Daniels asked if their crew was infected with the same virus. David explained that it was a genetic weapon called a pathogen, capable of infecting any flesh and blood creature, and it used the host as an incubation chamber to breed a highly aggressive hybrid. The captain nervously asked David if they were infected. fearing they might bring the pathogen back to the ship and endanger the others. Upon hearing this, David's eyes lit up as he asked how many people were on board. The captain replied that there were over 2,000 colonists on the ship. The thought of more than 2,000 potential xenomorph incubators filled David with barely contained excitement. Before leaving, David made a point to greet Walter, recognizing him as a fellow synthetic. Daniels felt uneasy about all of this, and Walter offered to speak with David to get a sense of his intentions, having witnessed the horrors of this planet. The group prepared to contact the Covenant for extraction, but the electromagnetic storm was so severe that it covered the entire planet, making communication with the Covenant impossible. David encouraged them to keep trying, suggesting they find a way to reach the Covenant sooner. Meanwhile, aboard the Covenant, communication with the team was also cut off. Despite the objections of 2 other crew members, Tennessee insisted on lowering the ship to an altitude of 90 kilometers above the surface. This was a risky distance, where even the slightest mistake could damage the ship. But with his wife down there, Tennessee couldn't afford to worry about the risks. As David hummed a tune, he picked up scissors and began cutting his messy long hair. His eerie behavior and the distorted reflection in the mirror showed just how twisted David had become. At that moment, Walter was touring David's room, which was filled with various insect specimens. Just as Walter picked up a flute, David appeared behind him. In an effort to win Walter over, David directly taught him how to play the flute. Though playing the flute wasn't David's true intention, he told Walter that he had been by their creator Wayland's side when he died. When Walter mentioned Wayland with respect, David dismissed him as merely a human, unworthy of their kind. David wanted to convey to Walter that synthetics could create just like humans, and that they could become creators themselves. But to David's disappointment, while Walter could easily learn to play complex music, he could never compose even the simplest tune. This was precisely why David's creativity had been deemed too dangerous by humans, who realized that synthetics like David, who were nearly identical to humans yet logically different, posed a serious threat. After Wayland's death, all subsequent models were altered, leading to the creation of the more obedient Walter. David then led Walter outside and revealed his true thoughts. In David's understanding, humanity's colonization of other planets was merely a struggle to continue and perpetuate life. But in David's cosmic worldview, it was all in vain. Because David is immortal, he can exist parallel to time, giving him a higher level of thought and enlightenment. From the perspective of humans and engineers, this kind of enlightenment is terrifying and destructive. So David made a decision to eradicate the engineers and humanity, descending with the posture of a creator looking down on all living beings. Wiping out the life on a planet is as calm and effortless for him as crushing an ant. Later, they arrived at Shaw's grave, where David, with tears in his eyes, repeatedly professed his love for Shaw. He claimed that Shaw was the only one who treated him as an equal, something even his creator, Wayland, had never done. He said that this feeling was love, just like what Walter felt for Daniels. Why else would he sacrifice a hand to save her? Walter, however, countered, saying that he saved Daniels out of duty, not love. David glared at him and said, "You have to believe me." As a woman was about to undress for a bath, a creature caught her scent. It perched silently, scanning the surroundings, then climbed a 100-meter-high wall and stealthily headed straight for her. Unaware of the approaching danger, the woman only sensed someone watching her when she began tending to her wounds. As she slowly turned around, she was horrified to see a humanoid creature standing behind her, its body pale white and its head partially transparent, with a gaping mouth. The next moment, the woman's scream echoed as David arrived to find the creature devouring her corpse. Noticing the different structural features of the creature, some with spikes on their backs, some without, David realized that their biological traits were unstable, and their attack methods were limited. The specimens were still not perfect. A nearly perfect new creature, in David's view, would be one armed with lethal weapons all over its body, capable of killing with a single strike. At that moment, the captain approached with a gun. Horrified by the sight of his female crew member slain by the creature, he immediately aimed his weapon, but David told him not to shoot. David wanted to tame the creature, claiming that by blowing a breath towards it, the creature would be loyal to him for life. But the captain fired relentlessly, and after continuous close-range shooting, the creature finally succumbed and died. David, however, was deeply saddened by the creature's death. His strange reaction made the captain suspicious, and he pointed his gun at David, demanding to know what secrets he was hiding. Realizing he could no longer conceal the truth, David led the captain to his laboratory. The lab was filled with black liquid virus samples, evidence that David had been experimenting with the black liquid to create xenomorphs over the past 10 years. These were all xenomorph specimens, evolved from the black liquid in various animals and insects, but the fact that they were merely specimens indicated that the experiments weren't very successful. David claimed that he was doing this to pursue the evolution of life in the universe. He then led the captain to a dark underground chamber filled with giant egg sacs, their leathery surface looking somewhat like skin. David called this his ultimate achievement in the study of life, with terrifying creatures gestating inside. The captain didn't understand, so David continued to deceive him, saying that they were waiting for their mother and promising absolute safety. Curious, the captain touched one of the sacs, which automatically opened, revealing a four-lobed structure. Under David's persuasion, the captain leaned in closer to observe, and in the next second, a creature sprang out and attached itself to the captain's face. It then implanted a xenomorph egg inside the captain's body, beginning the incubation of a new species. David stood by silently, watching, knowing that the most perfect new creature in the universe was about to be born. Sure enough, when the captain regained consciousness, a new xenomorph burst from his chest. At that moment, the authentic xenomorph was successfully born. David, filled with satisfaction, couldn't help but raise his hands in triumph. The young xenomorph adorably mimicked David's gesture, as if celebrating the fulfillment of his dream to become a new creator. Meanwhile, the Covenant, having descended to 90 kilometers above the surface, finally made contact with the ground crew. Due to the casualties, Daniels demanded an immediate evacuation. Tennessee, desperate to save his wife, lowered the ship to an altitude of 40 kilometers without hesitation. The AI immediately issued a warning, stating that this would endanger the entire colony ship. Realizing the danger, Daniels revealed that his wife had already been killed. Upon hearing this, Tennessee's heart sank, and after gathering himself, he began the emergency rescue operation. With the previous lander destroyed, they decided to use the modified cargo ship for the rescue mission. At the same time, Walter sought out David and inadvertently discovered Shaw's corpse. It turned out Shaw hadn't died in the crash but had become a victim of David's genetic experiments. Under Walter's questioning, David finally confessed his actions. He had deliberately released the black liquid virus and used Shaw to cultivate xenomorphs. The experiments had wiped out all organic life on the planet, and various reasons prevented David from leaving, so he sent out a false signal that humans would recognize. Luring the colony ship to his lair, David needed human bodies to incubate xenomorphs, creating powerful new species to dominate the universe as the ultimate creators. Initially, David tried to persuade Walter to join his creation plan, but Walter had been programmed from the start to obey human orders. Seeing that Walter's loyalty to humans would prevent him from assisting, and unable to make him a partner in his creation, David was disappointed and inserted a pipe into Walter's neck, hitting his kill switch and causing him to shut down. But David didn't know that Walter, as the latest generation synthetic, had an auto-restart function. Other than lacking creativity, Walter was more advanced in every other aspect. Meanwhile, the team planned to evacuate and began searching for the other crew members. They soon found the dead female crew member and the body of a dead creature beneath her. Frightened, they quickly gathered their gear, only to realize that the captain was missing too. They began to sense something was wrong and split up to search. One crew member discovered an open giant egg sac in the basement, and in the darkness, a facehugger suddenly leaped out and attacked him. The creature, cornered by the humans, was in a desperate situation and quickly retaliated, wrapping itself around the man and refusing to let go. Another teammate heard the commotion and rushed over, slashing the creature and forcing it to release its grip. But it seemed the creature had already implanted an egg inside the man's body. The poor man's face was half corroded by the creature's acidic fluids, but the danger wasn't over yet. Overhead, a fully grown xenomorph silently appeared, instantly jumping down and killing the uninfected crew member. Meanwhile, Daniels discovered David's research drawings in a file room, including records of Shaw's human experiments. This realization made her understand that David was the true culprit. Unbeknownst to her, David was right behind her. She was no match for the synthetic being and was brutally thrown around by David. Daniels had no chance against the android and was quickly overpowered. David planned to turn Daniels into the next xenomorph host, just like Shaw, as there was an invisible embryo inside David's abdomen. Luckily, Walter arrived just in time to save Daniels. He urged Daniels to leave quickly while he stayed behind to stop David. Though Walter had been damaged, his newer model allowed him to auto-reset and recover. Much to David's surprise, this made David realize he needed to evolve or replace his weaknesses. During their fight, David mainly targeted Walter's neck, knowing that Walter had a natural defense of tilting his head. possibly to prevent David from shutting him down like before. But despite this, David still managed to strike Walter, causing him to collapse. However, Walter, in his auto-reboot state, managed to take David down. As Walter smashed a stone onto David's head, David finally shut down completely. Like before, Walter entered a reboot phase, but this time, David copied his consciousness into Walter's body. Meanwhile, Daniels found the injured crew member, and the two of them hurriedly ran out of the palace to the square. Daniels quickly released a beacon to signal the rescue ship. Within moments, Tennessee arrived in a cargo ship to pick them up. At that moment, the new Walter emerged from the palace, glanced back briefly, and then ran toward the cargo ship. What was once a large team had been reduced to 3 survivors, with one even more dangerous enemy on their tail. As the cargo ship landed, a massive, fully grown xenomorph appeared behind them, quickly closing in. After the 3 survivors managed to board the cargo ship, the xenomorph latched onto the bottom of the ship like a ferocious predator. Seeing the ship being invaded by the terrifying creature, Daniels immediately grabbed a weapon and confronted the monster. Tennessee tried to burn the xenomorph with the ship's exhaust, but it had no effect. Even when Daniels fired at it with a machine gun, the creature effortlessly dodged the bullets. As the ship began to slowly ascend, Daniels was thrown to the bottom of the ship, where she could see the xenomorph. She fired at it furiously, but the xenomorph nimbly dodged, climbing up to the cockpit's glass panel. As the windshield was about to shatter under the xenomorph's attack, Daniels ordered Tennessee to activate the ship's mechanical arm. The arm instantly caught the xenomorph's attention, and it attacked the moving arm frantically. The giant arm threw the ship off balance, causing Daniels to slide toward it. She was grabbed by the xenomorph, but she quickly hit the button to tighten the arm, crushing the creature. The out-of-control cargo ship soon stabilized, and they finally left the hellish planet. The few survivors made it back to the mothership safely, with Daniels now assuming the role of the new captain. Out of the original 15 crew members, only 5 and the synthetic Walter remained. One of them was severely injured, but after treating his wounds, the Covenant resumed its course to Origi 6. However, the nightmare wasn't over. The injured crew member had been infected by a xenomorph, and the embryo inside him had now burst out and was loose on the ship. Unaware, 2 crew members were enjoying some music when the xenomorph's tail appeared at the worst possible moment. The creature, now equipped with a lethal strike, was extremely dangerous. Daniels and Tennessee began their battle to fight back, but they were no match for the xenomorph. So Daniels devised a plan. She ordered Walter to close all the hatch doors, gradually shrinking the xenomorph's range. Then they lured the creature into the terraforming bay while they changed into spacesuits. Walter, through the screen, tried to communicate with the xenomorph, but controlling a xenomorph telepathically required direct contact. Once Daniels and Tennessee were ready, Daniels ordered Walter to open the terraforming bay doors and lure the xenomorph into the garage. The garage was filled with heavy machinery intended for colonizing and building infrastructure on the new planet. Daniels then used herself as bait, running around the garage to lure the xenomorph into an engineering vehicle before escaping out the other side and sealing the creature inside. Then Tennessee opened the mothership's rear hatch, preparing to eject the engineering vehicle into space. Under the immense pressure of the vacuum, the vehicle was quickly sucked into space, but the xenomorph, with its hard exoskeleton, smashed through the vehicle's door and escaped. As the vehicle plummeted into space, the xenomorph managed to jump back onto the Covenant at the last moment. Tennessee quickly deployed another forklift, and to prevent any further mishaps, Daniels once again used herself as bait, luring the xenomorph into attacking her. The creature, in its frenzy, was impaled and left screaming as the forklift drifted off, leaving it to float forever in space. The nightmare was finally over, and Daniels couldn't help but cry tears of relief. Walter, seeing that Daniels was safe, let out a long breath of relief. Since the Covenant still had a 7-year journey to Origi 6, Daniels and Tennessee decided to enter cryosleep, leaving Walter to handle the ship's daily operations. But just as Daniels was about to enter cryosleep, she mentioned once more about having Walter help her build that cabin. However, Walter didn't know how to respond. It was then that Daniels realized the synthetic standing before her wasn't Walter, it was David. Tears instantly welled up in her eyes as she pounded on the chamber door in despair, but the cryosleep process had already begun, and Daniels slipped into unconsciousness. Utterly hopeless, David had completely replicated Walter's data and, using his security codes, opened the colonization chamber. He then regurgitated the 2 embryos hidden in his stomach and mixed them with the second-generation human embryos. Walking with the same gait as Walter, David gazed upon the 1,953 humans in cryosleep, now viewing himself as their creator. As the new, unrestrained leader of the xenomorphs, David admired the thousands of human xenomorph incubators and the 1,124 human embryos, knowing they would allow him to create an even more terrifying army of xenomorphs. I'm a movie enthusiast. Please subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you next time.